I forgot about a house I owned. I literally forgot about it. Was still paying the mortgage, but didn't was not. It wasn't in my property management software. I did wasn't in my mind that I owned this house. I drove by it like every day too.
Hey guys, this is George Uno with REIClub. Thank you so much for joining me again for another episode of First and Worst. Now, today my guest is a guy who went off to West Point. Then he got deployed overseas, Iraq and Afghanistan, serving our country. And he actually read the Little Purple Book over there, overseas, and got into his mind, hey, that passive income sounds really good compared to what I'm doing right now. So while he was still on active duty, he started building up that passive income. And from there, things just snowballed and took off. And before he knew it, he was, had 60 doors of his own and was like, wow, this is amazing. But Jimmy, let's get to know you, man. How are you doing over there in St. Louis?
George, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. So how many deals you guys have going on right now?
So we'll do 120 turnkeys and we'll do around 100 wholesales this year. So we got 20 to 25 deals going on at any given time.
It's crazy. All right. Well, so that's probably a lot to manage. So I don't want to keep you too long. But take us back. So you're in Afghanistan, Iraq. You read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And how does that change the way you're looking at life and planning for things?
Growing up, I thought the only way you could become wealthy was to be to be famous. Maybe politician. I realized with my mouth in my time in the military, politician was out. Actor, I not pretty enough to do that. And then athlete, which is what I really wanted to be, but not talented enough for that. So I was just like, I'm just gonna live this nice. Definitely not going to be wealthy. But then Rich Dad, Poor Dad opened me up to the fact that, hey, the wealthy don't work for money. The wealthy create and think and buy assets. They don't trade their time. They buy assets, and then their assets essentially buy their time back. So that was paradigm shifting for me.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, it's just funny that's everybody kind of gets that mind shift out of that book, and so many investors have read that book and was their catalyst. You read the book, you say, okay, assets are what it's all about. So how do you decide on real estate, and where'd you go from there?
And then I think I went home for leave, and so Kiyosaki, I don't know how, my mom actually sent me the book. I don't know how my mom found the book. I'm assuming it was when he was on Oprah. I'd have to ask her. But so she knew about Kiyosaki. She wanted to get in on this. And then my brother was in medical school at the same time. Then he read it. He's like, yeah, let's get in on this. And I'll never forget this. So, interest rates were at 6. And I'll never forget my mom being like, interest rates will never be this low. We got to buy now. And they were at 6.5. So, we started doing what everybody does. We started looking on the MLS. We started walking houses. We didn't know what we were doing. This was in retrospect, this is 2006. This was the worst time to be buying. Worst time to be flipping, not worst time to be buying. I think when you're buying long-term assets, all the time's a good time to be buying. But we can get into that later. We bought a rental house, and then my brother lived in there and was a tenant for us through med school, and then he got 2 other med school students, so we got elevated rent. It was like an Airbnb before they were invented.
Wow, pioneering. Okay, so you got it. It was a duplex then?
Single family, but we charged rent by the room.
Nice. Yeah, that's the way to do it. So obviously in a college town near the med school?
In St. Louis, so there's St. Louis University, not exactly a college town.
Yeah.
But for these med students, they're a little older. They want a yard. They want stuff like that. They want to be able to barbecue. They don't want to live in a dorm.
Right. Yeah. The days of top ramen are over for them. That's really cool. Okay, so take us through it. You bought it a decent time. I mean, because it's a long-term asset. But how did things play out through the Great Recession with you guys?
Change, no effect. The asset value might have died down, but we had a 30-year fixed loan on it, so it was irrelevant. And then what has been awesome is the Fed has continued to print money, and so we've continued to raise rents now for the last 13 years as inflation has taken its effect.
All right. What was your cash flow on that? I mean, that's what survived through the Great Recession for you. You guys didn't run out of liquidity or anything, right?
You know,
Pretty
and we
decent.
had two other partners on the deal, so that was the frustrating part in the beginning. Is like $200 divided by three. You're not exactly getting passive income equals your expenses, like Kiyosaki says.
Right, right. But it worked out. And then what'd you guys end up doing with it? I know you have some. You guys said it kind of snowballed from that one rental.
We sold it and bought a lake condo for it, but then in the last 2 years, we were getting offers we couldn't refuse, and so we 1031'd into a condo in Branson, and then we were getting offers we couldn't refuse. We made like $100,000, and we 1031'd it back to a nicer four-family in St. Louis, like a straight up wealth builder four-family.
Wow. Now what's that fourplex look like? What's it worth now, and what's it cash flowing?
I think it's worth three and some change, and I bet you we make $1,500 a month.
Man, that's quite the snowball.
One thing you have to do to look like a genius in real estate:
What's that?
do it for 10 years.
Be patient, huh?
If you do it for 10 years, you'll look like a genius. Doesn't matter what happens. Doesn't matter what tenants do to the house. Doesn't matter.
Huh. So it doesn't matter what happens with the house. Well, I think you have some kind of story about a house that kind of got maybe fell through the cracks or something.
I made a lot of mistakes in real estate. Do you want to? Two huge mistakes I made in real estate is one, buying assets based off the pro forma of the first year performance. Like buying and selling based off that was a horrible mistake I've made in real estate. We can get into that too. But I mean, I forgot about a house I owned. I literally forgot about it. Was still paying the mortgage, but it wasn't in my property management software. It wasn't in my mind that I owned this house. I drove by it like every day too.
Well, okay, so take us back to that. Why is it a mistake to look at the pro formas for the first year of a house and then sell it based on that value?
I call it like the cash flow paradox. Like when you really need it and you're white knuckling your cash flow, you won't get it. Like the tenant karma will come to you for your worrying. A tenant will smash something will break. But then the most chill people who don't need the cash flow and don't care about the cash flow get it all the time. There's no scientific statement around that. It's what I've observed.
So basically, like you look at the first year, that's not a good predictor of how that rental is going to pencil out in 3 or 5 or 10 years?
Oh.
Okay. And that's been your experience?
So I see a lot of people looking at pro formas for I call them Excel millionaires. When I started doing this on my own, I bought a four-family for like $80,000, and like each unit rented out at $500, right? So I'm like, wow, that's $2,000 in gross rent, and my mortgage is like $400, and I should be cash flowing $1,000 every month, and so the pro forma looks awesome. The pro forma didn't mention it was in the ghetto. Pro forma didn't mention it was not a good long-term asset. Pro forma didn't mention any of that. It just said year one, you're going to crush. And we didn't crush because we were chasing rent the whole time.
Okay, so there's more to it than just the numbers. There's kind of that subjective aspect. Is that what you think is important?
Like, in real estate, you win in 4 ways, so it's really hard to lose. Like, it doesn't, like we talked about my first deal, right? Essentially, me, my brother, and mom were throwing darts at the MLS. As long as we didn't buy something that was massively overpriced, there's no way we would have lost. I don't touch the stock market because it's so boring. It's like all you can do is buy low and sell high. Like I don't play a game where I can only win one way. That's like football before the invention of the forward pass. I like playing games where you win multiple ways. Like I love it that a single family asset will keep up with the stock market with appreciation. Then I love that cash flow from a rental property. Like I buy rentals right now to lower my taxes. I love it that I get to collect assets and it lowers my tax liability. And then the ability to use leverage. I love it that I borrow money from a bank and I borrow it for 30 years. And on years 15 through 30, because of inflation, I'm giving the bank back garbage dollars.
No, when you put it like that, I mean, you're totally right. We see that now. You're paying back inflated dollars on a fixed mortgage.
But I'm collecting more garbage dollars in rent, and my cash flow is that delta between a fixed cost of capital and the increasing rents. Like that's when the cash flow hits. It's not the first 12 months. Because I used to white knuckle it. I'd be like, oh, I just added, the pro forma said $200, so I'm $200 closer to quitting my job. Like that's when the assets are leveraged, it's just not going to happen.
What's the fourth way to win?
Taxes, leverage, cash flow, and appreciation.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so we touched those. Okay. So tell us about that house you forgot, because obviously that's a giant mistake, huge oversight. But how did that end? Like, what happened there?
So the reason it happened is we were moving offices, and the leasing agent who took the deposit didn't get it into the software when we were moving. And turns out these were horrible tenants. These tenants spent like 6-7 months there just tearing it in half. The county called me. It's like, you owe this derelict house. I'm like, no, I don't. And they're like, yeah, you do. And I'm like, oh, I actually do. There's like $30,000 in damages here. Like, I can't do this right now. So what did I do? I bet on, this is 2018. I bet on the market saving me, and I just sat on the house for 2 years. And I eventually I think I made 20 grand off it. I gambled and I won. I would not recommend that to anyone.
But it's nice. It's nice you bought a good asset at a good price, and the market saved you, which you can't always count on.
Like it's not. I could not buy a book about, hey, forget your houses and grow wealthy.
That sounds too good to be true, almost.
I mean, I did buy the house for 30 grand. With the COVID kick up, with the market going crazy, it eventually appreciated to 60.
With no work.
With rehab, I bet you it's worth 180.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good for a forgotten house. Hey, I have a question for you, the listener. Do you have your REIClub.com account set up yet? If you don't, you need to go create it today, because you're going to get access to our real estate forums where you can network and get answers to questions that are local to you. You'll get access to our real estate calculators to help you crunch the numbers on your next deal, whether that's a rental property, short-term rental, or just a wholesale deal. And you'll also get access to updates when we launch content like this that you're listening to right now. So whether you're getting your first deal or your 101st deal, REIClub.com is the place that investors go to get the tools they need to succeed. All right, now back to the show. So, Jimmy, what do you guys got going on today? I heard you guys just crossed a big milestone with your students.
We got our education platform, CashFlow Tactics, where we talk about the 4 ways to win, and we show people, all the financial jiu-jitsu you can do when you're buying assets, where you win 4 ways. So we show people how to acquire turnkey assets and how to add it to their financial plan. And we have, our community's bought over 2,000 houses, so we just crossed that. They're getting $1 million. The community's collectively getting $1 million in cash flow a month.
That's crazy. And you guys are buying these assets in the Midwest and flipping them and selling them as turnkey rentals. That just makes a lot of sense for people who don't. I heard you were on a podcast and the guy was like, "Why didn't you get into wholesaling right away?" And you were like, "Well, I wasn't ready to make that full-time dive. I didn't want to be actively investing." And for a lot of people, that's kind of where they're at, right? They have a lot of income. They have a good job. They don't feel that need to quit right away. So you find this like to be a safe and easy way for them to start building that snowball?
It's the best way. I don't know of a better asset out there that can do all that a single family house can do for you.
Yeah. And what's the typical process for taking these people who are, busy professionals, and how do you guys get them into real estate, and what does that process look like?
You sign up for our course. It's like a 15 video course to kind of explain the basics to you. Then we have weekly calls. Because it sounds silly, but to buy a house, I'm trying to think. For me, reading Rich Dad Poor Dad to actually buying a house, walking 100 deals, all that type of stuff, it took like probably 2 years. So we're able to shorten that timeline down really to 60 to 90 days for people and give them enough education to kind of be dangerous and start learning. We also hook them up with a financial instrument called the Vault, probably outside the scope of this podcast. Basically, we get them pre-approved by a bank, and once they say, "Hey, I'm ready to buy," then we just start showing them deals.
So you mentioned the Vault. Kind of tell us how you guys are teaching your students to use the Vault and what it does to their returns, their ROI.
When you first read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and another great Kiyosaki book's A Conspiracy of the Rich, and you're like, wait a minute, the wealthy seem to be playing by a different set of rules, and you get exposed to that, and it pisses you off a little bit, quite frankly, right? And so when I discovered the vault, it really pissed me off because everyone who's wealthy has these assets and no one talks about it. So the vault's essentially a whole life insurance policy, and people are like, whole life insurance policy, that's so boring. Like, whole life is like the backbone of the economy. Like, all liquidity is stored with life insurance companies. You could make probably outside the scope of this podcast, you could make an argument that life insurance companies in the 2008 crash kept the economy solvent because they had liquidity. You had drug dealers and you had life insurance companies who were providing liquidity to the economy.
Yeah, so you're talking about cash value life insurance, right?
We teach a strategy that you put your money in a whole life policy. You get a 5% tax-free return. So 5% tax-free is really an 8%. Then you borrow against that life insurance policy for your down payment of the house. So you're still getting 5% tax-free, the return. And then if you look at a single-family asset, generally you get a 30% internal rate of return. So we're just showing our students how to increase the velocity of their dollars.
Wow, I need to do that because I've got some deals I want to do, but I don't want to just spend the cash and it's gone forever, right? And with these cash value, it sits there, you borrow against it, and it keeps compounding. Is that right?
So the cash is working in two assets at the same time.
That does seem like a different set of rules for sure.
And if you look at like every politician, if you look at their tax return, they all have massive amounts of cash in these policies.
How fast can you get your students from not having one of these to getting it set up and ready to deploy the capital?
90 days.
Just a 90-day seasoning, that's it.
Day one, let's say I put $100,000 into a vault. Day one, 80% of it's liquid and can be borrowed against.
Okay, I actually need to come and talk to you guys because this is perfect for me right now.
Yeah, you need Ryan and Brad will sell you a vault.
Cool, man. Well, Jimmy, thanks so much. Do you have any parting words for our audience? Any advice you want to give them? Somebody who's, kind of been looking at that house, kind of been, throwing some darts at the market, but not quite ready to go. Is this a good time to buy, or is this should we all be sitting on the sidelines a little bit scared?
My philosophy is it's always a good time to buy. Your reasons are just going to change. Now is the time to buy because deals are opening up. So the turnkey deals, for me to find I'll never forget, I was at the Collective Genius with Lee, spring of 2021, when the market was just red hot, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody was crushing on flips, and I was having trouble with deal flow. And he was like, Jimmy, that's because turnkey is great when it's hard to find buyers. It's not hard to find buyers right now. So there were few and far between on deals on turnkeys. And then all the students, guess what their main complaint was? Deals. And so right now we're in this perfect spot where at least in the Midwest, prices aren't dropping, but deals are opening up. And so now you can get that better 3-2 asset that you couldn't necessarily get the last 2 years. And then, if people are like, hey, I'm going to wait till interest rates go down to start buying, it won't work. Because as soon as rates go down, the funds are coming back in and taking everybody's opportunity. Play right now is to buy a great asset that is going to benefit from inflation, and you're going to get your cash flow from the inflation, even at a high interest rate, and then when interest rates drop, refi them out.
Yeah, that's super smart. You're locking in that purchase price right now, and the deals are kind of coming online.
Locking in, because of inflation, prices are leveling, but rents are rising. So you're locking in that leveled up price. And, I learned fun history fact. In the late 70s, when interest rates doubled, you would have thought the real estate market would have taken a bath, right? Rates doubled, asset prices tripled.
That doesn't make any sense based on what everybody's saying right now, but I'm going to have to go check that out.
Econ 101, you would think, hey, cost of capital is up, so demand will go down, right? Yes, demand has gone down, but 2 years ago or a year ago, we had an insatiable demand. There was no inventory to supply all the demand.
Right.
And so now, demand's low, but it's not low enough that inventory's sitting.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we're just seeing a little drop in prices, a little increase in days on market, but nothing crazy.
Right. And so the way I can explain why prices tripled when rates doubled is because why did rates double? Because they were in an inflationary period. Where do people flock to in an inflationary period? Hard assets.
Yeah, I mean, there was a huge lag before we even saw the first price decreases after the interest rates started going up because, investors are watching the numbers straight from the Fed and homeowners are still looking at their estimate. Two different worlds, two different, timelines. Very cool. All right, well, don't sit on the sidelines in 2023, guys. That's what Jimmy's saying.
Yeah, if you want to sit on the sidelines
ahead.
in 2023, just expect to sit on the sidelines for 2024 and 2025 because there won't be deals.
Yeah, it's gonna be impossible to time that shift when as soon as the rates drop. You're gonna miss it, guys. You just will. So, Jimmy, thanks so much for all that wisdom, man. You guys are crushing it over there. $1 million in passive cash flow for your students. That's got to feel amazing. You're changing a ton of lives, and I'm gonna be reaching out about that vault because man, I need one of those right now for sure.
Sounds good, bro.
All right, guys, it's George Uno with REIClub, Jimmy Vreeland with CashFlow Tactics. I'll catch you guys on the next episode. You guys can check out Jimmy at reiclub.com/cashflowtactics. Talk to you guys soon. See you later.